نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So this is our second lesson on Nawaqid al-Islam, and in the first lesson last week we introduced the treatise from the words of Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabiri Hafizahullah and Shaykh Muhammad Aman al-Jami Rahimahullah, and we started looking at the first Naqd, the first nullifier of Islam, from the speech of Shaykh Muhammad Aman. So in that lesson, in the first lesson, Shaykh Muhammad Aman Rahimahullah, from the few points that we took from the brief explanation, was that Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abd Rahimahullah, by way of al-istiqra is simply to take a comprehensive look at all of the texts and to analyze them and to deduce from them that there are 10 nullifiers of Islam which all of the Muslim scholars are agreed upon, and to which the rest of the nullifiers can be returned back to. And this indicates the importance of a student of knowledge understanding these nullifiers of Islam, to avoid them and to teach them to the people. So the first of them was a shirk in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Shaykh distinguished for us between a shirk al-akbar, which is major shirk which Allah does not forgive, and minor shirk, which includes things like showing off ar-riya and swearing by other than Allah when a person does not venerate the thing by which he is swearing. Right? So there are certain tafsilat, there are certain details as to what is a minor shirk. So the Shaykh distinguished between major shirk, which if a person dies upon, he will not be forgiven, and minor shirk, which is a major sin. So we're going to continue from where we left off in the Shaykh's explanation in today's lesson. So this is the start of lesson 2. And so after making this distinction at the beginning, the Shaykh then goes on to mention the proof that Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abd rahimahullah mentioned. وَقَالَ تَعَالَى إِنَّهُ مَنْ يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ الْجَنَّةِ وَمَأْوَاهُ النَّارِ وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. This is in Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is the 5th surah, surah number 5, verse number 72. Verse number 72. So Allah the Most High, He said, indeed, whoever associates partners with Allah, then Allah has made unlawful for him. Allah has made unlawful for him paradise, and his abode will be in the fire. And the wrongdoers, al-zalimeen, the wrongdoers, they will not have any aiders, any supporters or helpers. So the Shaykh says regarding this verse that whoever dies upon shirk, the person who dies upon shirk, dies upon worshipping others besides Allah, and who dies upon this belief, then it is those people upon whom paradise has been made haram, unlawful. And with respect to such people who die upon the shirk and kufr, it is not permissible for a Muslim to make istighfar for them, to ask for Allah's forgiveness for them, or to ask for Allah's mercy upon them, because they died upon this kufr or this disbelief. They died after having enjoyed the bounties and the favors of Allah Azza wa Jal, the bounties of life, the bounties of food, the bounties of drink, the bounties of various forms and types of pleasure, and they did not give thanks to Allah, which is from justice. It is from justice that you give thanks to Allah for all of these benefits and favors and pleasures and enjoyments and so on and so forth. And they died either rejecting these favors, in the sense that they rejected the Creator, or they affirmed the Creator and then they worshipped others alongside Him. They gave thanks to others alongside Him. They gave Him partners in worship, and this is injustice. This is great injustice to do this. So when they died upon this state, if they die upon this state, then they die upon shirk, they die upon disbelief, and Allah will not forgive them. Allah will not forgive them. And therefore, following on from this, it is not permissible for a Muslim then to start asking Allah to forgive them when they died upon kufr, and asking Allah to have mercy upon them when they died upon kufr. So it is not permissible to do that. As for, the Shaykh says, whilst a person is alive, what about when we are speaking about disbelievers and mushrikeen who are alive now? Are we allowed to curse them? Are we allowed to curse them? And the answer to this question is that we are allowed to curse categories of people in general. So for example, we say, because this is what is come in the Quran, may Allah curse the kafireen, and may Allah curse the mushrikeen, and may Allah curse the munafiqeen, right? Hypocrites, disbelievers, polytheists, al-zalimeen, the wrongdoers. So these, we are speaking now in terms of categories of people. We are not speaking about specific individuals, right? Specific individuals, like a specific disbeliever, a specific polytheist, who falls into the major shirk, or a specific hypocrite, but we wouldn't know who is a hypocrite to begin with in any case, then it is not permissible for us to curse these people. So for example, we could not say, may Allah curse so-and-so Christian. May Allah curse so-and-so Yahudi, so-and-so Jew. May Allah curse so-and-so atheist or whatever, right? By name, specific individuals. And the reason for this, the Shaykh explains, is because we do not have knowledge about what the end of this individual will be, what the outcome of this individual will be. Only Allah Azza wa Jal, He knows. So perhaps this kafir, this mushrik, this mulhid, this atheist, this munafiq, even though we wouldn't know that, perhaps that person will be given tawfiq by Allah Azza wa Jal. He will be given success by Allah Azza wa Jal, and He will allow him to make tawbah. He will make tawbah, and he will recant. And so therefore he will die upon Islam. And so for that reason, a specific disbeliever, a specific munafiq, hypocrite, a specific mushrik, polytheist, then we do not curse them individually, because the knowledge of their outcome lies only with Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, so the point being then, the Shaykh finishes by saying that in a general sense, what we do say is that anyone who dies upon nifaq, anyone who dies upon the nifaq which expels a person from Islam, right? The hypocrisy, which is hypocrisy in belief, or a person who dies upon shirk, major shirk, or a person who dies as a disbeliever, then in general we say, may Allah's curse be upon them. Right? We are still not speaking of individuals, but in a general sense, we are speaking of those who have this quality. The one who dies as a disbeliever, may Allah's curse be upon him. The one who dies as a mushrik, polytheist, may Allah's curse be upon him. The one who dies as a munafiq, as a hypocrite, with a hypocrisy in belief, may Allah's curse be upon him. We are saying these things in a general sense. These are general rulings which Allah speaks of in the Quran. But as for specific individuals, then as we have seen, the Shaykh says it is not permissible for us to start cursing specific individuals. So, But as for the one who actually dies, so when we know, for example, again in a general sense, a person who dies as a hypocrite or a mushrik or a kafir, then we have no doubt that that person is a person of the hellfire, right? In terms of the description that he dies upon. We don't have any doubt about that. But what the issue here is, the issue is with respect to specific individuals who are alive. Can we curse them? And can we? No, we can't. We cannot curse them. We cannot curse specific people. So this is the ayah that the Shaykh mentioned. And then after the ayah, Shaykh Islam Muhammad bin Abd, rahimahullah, he then explains to us something which falls into this category. And he mentions, وَمِنْهُ الذَّبْحُ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ كَمَنْ يَذْبَحُ لِلْجِنِّ أَوْ لِلْقَبَرِ. From the shirk is to sacrifice to other than Allah. To sacrifice an animal to other than Allah. Like the one who sacrifices to a jinn or to a grave, meaning to a tomb, to a dead person. So this now is an example of what enters into the shirk that is not forgiven by Allah Azza wa Jal. The Shaykh illustrated this by way of the example of sacrifice, al-dhabh, which is from the affairs of worship. So the Shaykh says, explaining this, whoever sacrifices to a jinn out of worship for that jinn, meaning that he sacrifices, let's say for example, he sacrifices a chicken. He takes a chicken and he takes it to a deserted place. And he sacrifices the chicken and he takes the blood and he smears it on, the walls of a house or something. Or he follows instructions like this. And he does this, and when he does this action, in his heart there is a fear of harm coming from the jinn if he did not do this, or he hopes that the evil that might come to him from the jinn is removed. So now in his heart there is fear and there is hope, right? Fear and hope. There is he wants some benefit and he wants some harm to be removed. And on account of that, there's fear and hope in his heart. So he performs this action in this manner. This now is worship of the jinn. This now is disbelief in Allah. It is shirk with Allah. Likewise, the one who goes to a grave, he takes an animal, or maybe he doesn't necessarily have to be at the grave, but he takes an animal and he sacrifices the animal, and he's sacrificing it for the sake or for the person in the grave. The dead person in the grave. And he does it because he is, he believes that the person in the grave will bring him forgiveness, or will bring him some benefit, or will remove some type of harm from him. And that if he does not sacrifice this animal, then perhaps the harm will not be repelled. Perhaps the benefit that he wants will not come to him. Maybe he has a disease and he wants the cure for the disease. And he believes by sacrificing to this person in the grave, this will lead to his disease being removed. Or maybe he is impotent. Maybe he can't have a child. And he believes that by sacrificing, this dead person in the grave will be pleased with him. And because he will be pleased with him, he will therefore effect, or he will bring about the ability for him to have children. So he sacrifices on that basis. All of this now, and basically he believes that this person in the grave is able to have an effect upon his livelihood, his rizq, and or upon his flock of animals, for example. Things like that. So this person is a kafir. This person has fallen into major kufr. And there's no difference between this person and between the very first disbelievers. The very first disbelievers. Now, once we have understood this, so this is clearly the first Naqd. It's very clear and simple to understand. Any person who directs an act of worship to other than Allah, then this person has invalidated his Islam. We finished the Shaykh's commentary with the point that the Shaykh makes, which is that there are many people, and this is like a doubt which is spread, there are many people who believe that shirk no longer exists within this nation. And that shirk ended a long time ago. It ended with the kuffar of Quraysh. Meaning, they say, that the Messenger of Allah was sent in order to put an end to shirk, such that it would never ever appear again in this ummah. And they believe that the shirk ended with the defeat of the Quraysh. So when the Quraysh were defeated and the pagan Arabs were defeated, then shirk came to an end, and that this ummah will not fall into shirk ever. And this is speech that we hear from the Sufis, the extreme Sufis. For example, this Habib Ali Jifri, this mushrik, who himself calls to shirk and invites to shirk and justifies shirk and argues for shirk. This person, for the people like him from the extreme Sufis, this is what they say. They say, "Ash-shirku manfiyun anil ummah, anil ummat al-Islami." These are his words. That shirk is denied from this Islamic nation. And in this, he has told a lie, because the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has informed us in numerous narrations that there will be people from this ummah who will revert to worshipping idols. And this is clear in the texts. And we see in the texts, in the ahadith, the Messenger of Allah warning his nation, telling his nation that you will certainly follow the ways of those who came before you, handspan by handspan, armspan by armspan, until if they were to follow a lizard's hole, then you would enter into a lizard's hole. And these are the Yahud and the Nasara, Jews and the Christians. And he would also say, may Allah curse the Jews and the Christians. For whenever a righteous man died amongst them, they would erect, they would erect and make a place of worship over his, over his grave, or over his, they would build a tomb and make it into a place of worship. And so the purpose of these warnings was to warn this Muslim nation from falling into the same way. And likewise in Surah Al-Fatiha, we say, guide us to the straight path. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. We ask Allah to favor us with the straight path, and not of the path of those upon whom is his anger, nor of those whom are astray. And the other previous nations. And so anyone who claims that shirk has ended and disbelief will never take place, then he is clearly mistaken and misguided in what he says. So the Shaykh says that this affair is very gharib, it's very strange, and it is talbis, it is deceiving the people, it's a deception of the people. And what is correct is that there is no difference between a person who committed shirk at the beginning, meaning when the Messenger of Allah when he was sent, and from the one who commits shirk at the end of this nation. Because shirk is shirk. Shirk is shirk. There's no difference between shirk then and between shirk today. And we find in many Muslim societies, the Shaykh says today, in many Muslim societies, in many Muslim countries, we find people who believe that the dead Shaykh who's in the grave, buried, dead in the grave, he's turned to bones and dust, that this Shaykh in the grave has the ability to benefit him or to harm him. And upon this false belief, this individual, he calls upon the Shaykh. So for example, when he goes out on a journey, when he leaves his village or leaves his city to go to a journey, he starts making dua to this wali or to this person in the grave. And he asks him, oh, make me safe, bless my journey, give me salama, give me safety, and return me safely. Oh, wali so-and-so. He makes dua to him like this. So then he goes to his journey, and when he comes back, we know he's come back due to Allah bringing him back safely. It is Allah who brought him back safely. Then when he comes back, what does he do? He goes to the grave and he sacrifices an animal in order to give thanks to the dead person in the grave for bringing him back safely, even though it is Allah that brought him back safely. And so this resembles like the mushriks we are told of in the Quran, فَإِذَا رَقِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. When they ride upon the ships, when they go on the ships, and the ocean becomes really wild and they feel that they will die and drown and die, they call only upon Allah alone. Only upon Allah alone. And then when He brings them back, saves them, brings them back to the land, then they start committing shirk with Him. They forget that they called upon Allah alone. Whereas these individuals today are actually worse than those people. They are worse than those people. Because those people mentioned in the Quran, they knew that at a time of calamity when death is imminent, no one can save them. Not even their gods that they left upon the land. They cannot save them. Only Allah is the one who can save them. So in that moment, their hearts were emptied of their gods, of their deities, of the dead people, of the idols, of the statues. And they called only upon Allah alone. Whereas these people that the Shaykh is speaking about today, when you travel to these lands, you travel to these lands, our Muslim lands, and you see these people that, it's not even a time of calamity or hardship, it's a time of ease. When they leave and they go on a journey and they come back, they believe that the wali in the grave is the one who brought them back safely. Whereas those mushriks on the ocean, on the sea, they knew that only Allah could save them. And then they denied Allah's favor when they came back and they began to worship the idols. These people from the very beginning, they ascribe, they believe that this wali is the one who actually saves them, who can save them. So the shirk is more evil and worse by far than the shirk of the first people. So the Shaykh is giving an example here of this type of individual, which no doubt it exists. These types of people exist in our lands. And so the point being, the Shaykh says, how can anyone describe this type of person as a Muslim? How can this person be a Muslim? When his contradiction of La ilaha illallah is so blatant and so obvious. This is a great and mighty affair. But this is what these people, like this individual Habib Ali Jifri and others from the extreme Sufis, this is what they are saying. They are saying that shirk is negated from the ummah, and no matter what a person does, he can never leave Islam. Right? But this is a contradiction, because this is what the entire Quran is pointing out. It's pointing out the contradiction between a person affirming that Allah is the creator, the Lord, the provider, the sustainer, on the one hand, and then calling upon others besides Allah. This is the argument of the Quran against the people of shirk, and it is pointing out the contradiction between affirming His rububiyyah and then worshipping others besides Him. And so these people then, the point is that if a person says Allah is my Lord, creator, provider, sustainer, the one who controls benefit, the one who controls harm, then it's a contradiction for you then to go and call upon a wali and say, oh wali so-and-so save me, oh wali so-and-so grant me safety. Because this now is a contradiction between what you are saying and professing and between what you are doing. And if you truly, genuinely believed that Allah is the creator, provider, sustainer, giver of life, taker of life, the one who controls benefit, harm, then your heart would have been attached to Him and invoked only Him alone, not to the wali or the dead person in the grave. So this is a clear contradiction. And there is no doubt, we don't have any doubt, that the people who fall into the likes of this, that they are committing an act of shirk, which is even more severe and more serious than the shirk of the very first people. And a person who dies upon this, then how can we say this person has died upon Islam? So this shows the falsehood of this claim that the shirk of the very first people has ended with Islam, with the sending of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rather, this we see is the complete opposite. The reality is the opposite. We see the Muslim nation, in all the various Muslim countries, we see that they are steeped in this shirk. You travel from the west part of Africa, and you go all the way right down to right to the other side near Australia, Indonesia, that way, and you will find that almost every single nation, you will find that there are people who worship others besides Allah. And in some of these countries, it is an epidemic. It is everywhere, in every place. You go to Pakistan, for example, and you go to, you travel from one end to the other end, from village to village, and you will see that for the most part, you will see that they have tombs, they have small mausoleums with green domes, and they go there and they ask for their needs and things of that nature, curing of illnesses. Same thing in other countries as well. So anyone who makes the likes of this claim is a mubtil, he is speaking falsehood, is a falsifier, and the reality is other than what he says. So, a shirk remains, it is present, and from its manifestations, the Shaykh says, is making an oath to other than Allah, to sacrifice to other than Allah, to a jinn, or to the tomb, or to stones, or to trees. All of this is disbelief in Allah, and it is from the nullifiers of Islam. So that's the speech of Shaykh Muhammad Aman, rahimahullah, upon the first nullifier. As we mentioned, this is a brief commentary that we will use, inshallah ta'ala, to introduce each nullifier. Now we move to the commentary of Shaykh Ubaid, hafizahullah. And in this commentary, we go into a bit more detail, more tafsil, and there are some very, very important principles for us to understand and for us to take from this commentary. So first of all, the Shaykh, hafizahullah, he quotes the text of the Naqd, of the nullifier, starting from the beginning of the treatise, I'lam anna Nawaqid al-Islam 10 Nawaqid. Know that the nullifiers of Islam are 10 in number, 10 nullifiers. Al-awwal, al-shirku fi ibadatillah. The first is shirk in the worship of Allah. قال تعالى إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء. Quotes the ayah, and then he quotes another ayah which is similar. إنه من يشرك بالله فقد حرم الله عليه الجنة ومأواه النار وما للظالمين من أنصار. The same ayah that we mentioned previously. ومنه الذبح لغير الله. From it is sacrificing to other than Allah. كمن يذبح للجن أو للقبر. Such as the one who sacrifices to a jinn or to a grave, a tomb. So the Shaykh says, in beginning his commentary then, I say first of all, regarding the first part of the treatise, اعلم أن نواقد الإسلام 10 نواقد. He says there are a number of issues that we need to take from this opening statement. Right? These are the points that we need to be aware of. First of all, what is the meaning of Nawaqid? Nawaqid. We need to understand this word from a linguistic point of view and a technical point of view, so we are clear as to what it means. And this will help us to grasp, what exactly we are speaking about. So first of all, the first point then is that an-Nawaqid, Nawaqid is the plural of Naqid. Naqid. Naqid is the singular and Nawaqid is the plural. And Naqid is from Naqd. Naqd. And this is when you undo something, when you unravel something which is tied. Something which is sealed. Something which is ratified. Something which is, settled and established. This is the meaning of naqid. Something, or a naqd, to unravel and to undo something. To take something from the shape and form which it is in, and to change its form into something else, different to what it was in the beginning. Right? So this is the meaning of this word. Now, this naqd that we are speaking of, it can be in two senses. It can be in an actual physical sense, a physical sense, and we will give an example, or the Shaykh gives an example of this. It can be in a physical sense, or it can be in a conceptual sense, meaning in terms of meaning only, not in terms of something physical and tangible, right? So when we speak of this concept of unraveling, undoing, right, changing the form of something, then it can be in an actual physical sense, or it can be in a conceptual sense. So it can be hissi, or it can be ma'nawi. Hissi or ma'nawi. So, an example of how this would be in a physical sense, hissi, al-Naqd al-hissi, it is, let's say you take a rope. Now you know a rope, it's braided, right? A rope is intertwined. You have different threads, and then you intertwine them. You put them like a braid, or you know it's plated. So a rope is like this. So if you were to unravel the rope and take the threads, and often you see this, if you cut the rope at the end, and at the end it starts to fray, and its form starts to change, and it unravels. And so this part of the rope looks different to the part of the rope which is further up. Its form has now changed. So this now explains to us the meaning of naqd, right? To unravel something, to undo something, such that its form and its shape and its appearance now is different to what it was before. This is very clear to understand. As for the naqd al-ma'nawi, which is the conceptual form, meaning that it's in meaning only, not something tangible and physical. An example of this is when you have, for example, an agreement or a contract which is agreed upon by a number of parties. It could be 2 parties, it could be more than 2 parties. So conceptually speaking, we have agreed upon something, we've ratified something, we've sealed something, we've established something, we've tied something together, right? And then what happens is that a person then breaks that contract, breaks that mithaq or ahd, right? He's now broken the contract. So conceptually speaking, he's done the same thing, but in a conceptual manner as the example we gave with the rope. But it's in a conceptual sense, in terms of meaning, not in terms of physical sense. He's now broke the mithaq, he's broke the agreement, he's broke the contract. He's changed its form. Right? So this is an-Naqd. An-Naqid and Nawaqid. Nawaqid is the plural of Naqid. An-Naqid is Naqd. An-Naqd can be hissi and ma'nawi. This is the meaning of Naqid, a nullifier and invalidator of Islam. So the point being that a person can do certain actions which invalidate his Islam. Just like a person, if he was to cut the rope and, unbraid it, unplait it and separate it out, he's now made Naqd of the rope. Or a person, if he was to break the contract, he's now made Naqd of the contract. The contract now no longer exists. It's not valid. In a similar manner, a person can do certain actions, say certain things, believe certain beliefs, which are therefore a Naqd of Islam itself. So, this is the meaning of Naqid. The next issue then is, what is the meaning of Islam? What is the meaning of Islam? Because we are speaking of Nawaqid of Islam. So therefore we must understand Islam itself. So as for Islam, the Shaykh explains, Islam, there is 2 types of Islam. There is the Islam which we can call al-Islam al-Shar'i ad-Dini. Al-Islam al-Shar'i ad-Dini. This is the Islam which Allah has legislated for us as a religion. Right? This is one Islam. Al-Islam al-Shar'i ad-Dini. However, there is another Islam. And this Islam is universal. It is called al-Islam al-Kawni al-Qadari. Al-Kawni al-Qadari. Now this Islam is an Islam that is universal which applies to every single thing and every single being. This second Islam, there's no dispute about this Islam. And what it means, let me explain what it means. It means that Allah Azza wa Jal has created this creation upon certain laws, upon certain causes and effects, upon certain mechanisms, and the whole of His creation operates upon those mechanisms. And no one is outside of them. In this respect, every single thing, every single being within the heavens and the earth is in submission to Allah. The sun is in submission to Allah. The moon is in submission to Allah. Every element is in submission to Allah. The body of a disbeliever, of a kafir, of a mushrik, and everything that takes place in that body of chemical reactions and everything else that sustains that body, that is in submission to Allah. Right? That person cannot escape Islam in that sense, in that sense of the meaning. Right? Because everything is submitting to Allah. So, a kafir, when he commits his kufr, a mushrik, when he commits his shirk, in terms of the actions that he is doing, he is only able to do those actions on the basis of the mechanisms and the causes and the effects that Allah has created and granted to him. So even in his shirk and in his kufr, he cannot escape submitting to Allah, right? In the sense that every atom in his body, every molecule in his body, every thought process, how is it taking place? It's taking place by way of Allah's al-qada wal-qadar, by way of what Allah has decreed in His creation of causes and their effects and of mechanisms and so on and so forth. So in this sense, everybody is equal, right? A Muslim, a muwahhid, is equal in this respect, is the same in this respect to a mushrik, a kafir, a munafiq. There's no difference from the purely physical sense in terms of Allah's the mechanisms by which His creation runs, right? So the way my body functions is the same as anybody else's body functions. It's the same laws, the same rules, the same cause-effect mechanisms. It's all the same. This is what we mean when we say al-Islam al-Kawni al-Qadari. Al-Islam al-Kawni al-Qadari. So which of these two do we mean when we are speaking about the Nawaqid of Islam? Clearly it cannot be the second, because no one can contradict al-Islam al-Kawni al-Qadari. It's impossible for anyone to contradict and oppose and go outside of al-Islam al-Kawni al-Qadari, which is Allah's creation and the causes and effects and the mechanisms. No one can escape that. Rather, everyone is in submission to Allah Azza wa Jal in this respect. So this Islam is to do with Allah's qada and His qadar, and which no one can escape from. No one can escape what Allah has decreed for any individual. So this is not what we are speaking about, right? Rather, we are speaking about the Islam Shar'i Dini, the legislated Islam which Allah has enjoined upon His servants, that which He has commanded them to submit to Allah by worshipping Him alone. And this is what the prophets and messengers came with. The prophets and messengers, they came and they invited the people and told them, worship Allah alone, you have no other deity besides Him. So, this call to this Islam has divided the people into three groups. There are three groups of people in relation to this type of Islam, and they are the three people mentioned at the very beginning of the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah. The three categories of people mentioned at the beginning in Surah Al-Baqarah. And so the Shaykh says that in response to this call, to this Islam, which is Shar'i, Dini, then there are those people who respond to it. They respond to it positively. they are the people of Islam, and they respond to it outwardly and inwardly. Right? So this is now a genuine response. They believe inwardly and they respond outwardly. They respond inwardly and outwardly. This now, ظاهرا وباطنا, this person is a mu'min. This person is a believer. And these are the people described at the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, for which the book is a guidance. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, and so on. Mentions their characteristics. These are the believers now. They believe inwardly. يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, and they establish outwardly. They establish the prayer, and they spend of what Allah has given them. Right? So these are the believers. They respond inwardly and outwardly to this Islam, which is Shar'i Dini. Then there are those who respond to them outwardly, but not inwardly. So they respond ظاهرا, but not batinan. And these are the hypocrites. These are the hypocrites. And they are the ones who mentioned again in Surah Al-Baqarah, amongst mankind are those who say we believe, but they do not believe, did not really believe. And it mentions all of their traits and their characteristics. This is a second group. And the third group are those who are arrogant and they do not respond, and they disbelieve inwardly and outwardly. So they disbelieve inwardly and they make it clear that they disbelieve outwardly. And they are this person is a kafir. So we have a mu'min, we have a kafir, and we have a munafiq. These are the only three responses to the Islam Shar'i Dini. Islam Shar'i Dini. Otherwise, if we speak in terms of the Islam Kawni Qadari, all of these people are the same, because they are all under the qada and the qadar of Allah Azza wa Jal. They are under His creation, His creative command. They cannot escape being subjugated to Him in the creational sense. Well, they're all equal. But in terms of responding to the messengers and responding to the Islam, which is Shar'i Dini, then there are three categories of people: the mu'min, the kafir, and the munafiq. So this Islam then, that the messengers called to, we've explained that it is Shar'i Dini, meaning that it is something that Allah legislated for His servants, which is acceptable religion to Him. What is its definition? What is its definition? What is the definition of this Islam? This is important for us to understand. And the definition of this Islam is as follows. It has three components. There are three components to this Islam, which is Shar'i Dini, and on account of which the people are separated into a mu'min, a kafir, and a munafiq. And it is as follows: Al-istislamu lillahi bit-tawheed. Al-istislamu lillahi bit-tawheed, which is to submit to Allah in tawheed. To submit to Allah in tawheed. Inwardly you believe in His oneness, in His rububiyyah, in His al-asma'i wa sifat, in His uluhiyyah. So you believe in His oneness and you submit to Him. This is the first of three elements. The second element is al-inqiyad lahu bit-ta'ah. Al-inqiyad lahu bit-ta'ah, which is to comply with Him in obedience. To comply by being obedient to Him, by doing what He commanded and keeping away from what He prohibited. Right? So second thing is compliance. The first one is submission, that you accept inwardly that Allah alone has the right to be worshipped. The second now is compliance. You comply to Allah. You obey Him. And the third element is al-bara'atu min al-shirk wa ahlihi. Al-bara'atu min al-shirk wa ahlihi, which is to free oneself from shirk and its people. To free oneself from shirk and its people. So this is the Islam that the prophets and messengers called to. These are its elements. And this is the Islam which is intended in the various texts. This is the Islam which is intended. So for example, the statement of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, "Man qala la ilaha illallah wa kafara bima yu'badu min dunillah, haruma maluhu wa damuhu wa hisabuhu ala Allah." The one who says la ilaha illallah and who disbelieves in what is worshipped besides Allah, then his blood, his wealth and his blood become sacred. They become inviolable. And his reckoning is with Allah. His reckoning is with Allah, reported by Muslim in his Sahih. And likewise the hadith of Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, "Umirtu an uqatil an-nas hatta yashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah wa yuqimu as-salah wa yu'tu az-zakah فإذا فعلوا ذلك عصموا مني دماءهم وأموالهم إلا بحق الإسلام وحسابهم على الله." So I've been ordered to fight back against the people until they testify that none has right to be worshipped except Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and they establish the prayer and they give the zakah, and if they do that, then their blood and their wealth will become protected from me, except on account of a right of Islam, and their reckoning is with Allah. So here, these texts, this is the Islam which is intended in these texts. To submit oneself to Allah, to comply with Him in obedience, and to free oneself from shirk and its people. And anyone who does that, who enters into this Islam, then his blood and his wealth and his honor, they become inviolable. They become inviolable. They cannot be violated unless a right of Islam is violated by that person. And that right of Islam is further qualified. It is not general, it is further qualified in other texts, such as, for example, when a person kills another person, he commits murder, he commits zina whilst he's married, or he becomes a murtad, things like that. They are mentioned and clarified in other texts. So inshallah, we can leave it at this stage in our lesson today. We come to the end of today's lesson with this point, which is that we have now clearly understood what is the meaning of Naqd, what is Naqd, and we've now understood what is the Islam that is being intended here. It is the Islam which is Shari and Dini, on the basis of which the people are divided into three groups: Mu'min, Kafir and Mushrik. And that a person, who enters into this Islam, it has three elements: al-istislamu lillahi bit-tawheed, wal-inqiyad lahu bit-ta'ah, wa al-bara'atu min ash-shirki wa ahlihi. This is the Islam that we are speaking of, that becomes invalidated by way of certain actions and by way of certain statements. So we'll conclude at this point, because the next section, there are a number of points on that, and we'd like to discuss them together. So we'll conclude our lesson there today, and we'll continue inshallah ta'ala next week at the same time with the remaining part of this commentary inshallah ta'ala. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.